while we really wanted to go over here and do this thing and we tried it, we got feedback. So we don't have to wonder anymore about that trail over there. Because rather than wondering, we just went ahead and did it. And I wander off on a lot of trails. Sometimes they work out and sometimes they most assuredly do not.
What if story is the answer to our crises of meaning and belonging, to our impulse to heal our lives and help others, to our desire and drive to leave this world better than we found it? Now, we love good stories. In fact, we're kind of obsessed, not just with the stories themselves, but with the stories behind the stories. Their oddly perfect timing, the healing process they provoke in their authors, and their capacity to catalyze individual and collective change. And we love exploring these with writers, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, healers, parents, and others. Tune in to hear these stories behind the stories and entertain with us the real possibility that whether you are a teller or a consumer, story is always offering or leading us to an answer. Serial and successful entrepreneur Cheryl Herrick found herself stuck when it came to clarifying her next venture, but she continued to practice the basics she had learned as a child, a mother, a business owner, a race car driver, a transformational facilitator, and a seeker. When the vision finally became clear, all we could do was laugh. Tune in to hear how Cheryl discovered her superpowers as a child who played team sports and raced competitively. You'll find out how she came upon the practices and philosophies that have made her a successful serial entrepreneur and a powerful change agent in her home, her community, and her industries. You'll also see how she realized that transformation and healing could be easier and a hell of a lot more fun. It's time. Go grab a cup of something yummy and enjoy these sips of story and sanity with us. Welcome to Sips of Story and Sanity, where we talk about the stories behind the stories with authors, speakers, thought leaders, healers, parents, and entrepreneurs. My team, son Aaron.
Hello.
Sister Alyssa.
Hi.
And clients turned friends turned team members, Teddy.
Hey, y'all.
And Lori.
Hi, everyone.
They're all here to help me make sure that we get the most delicious sips of story and sanity out of this conversation. And it's going to be yummy today, y'all, because we have Cheryl Herrick, who I've known for at least lifetimes. Cheryl is a serial entrepreneur who enjoys working on projects that approach common industries, such as medical devices, the automotive industry, and home building, how all those three goes together, in an unconventional way through innovation and, most importantly, the business philosophy of Dr. W. Edwards Deming. Her current project is working as a partner in Global One Habitats, which builds unconventional houses at a rate of 1 per day to help with the affordable housing crisis. Her passion project, Racing for Warriors, uses auto racing to give back to military service members with post-traumatic stress and other wounds of war. Who says healing can't be fun? That's her big question, and fun she is. I'm so glad you're here, Cheryl. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have people who show up with all kinds of scenes behind them. And I'm sure that people who are watching this need to know what is happening behind you. Where are you? And tell us about that delicious car behind you.
Okay, so the one right here that's getting its close up right now, that's my race car. So affectionately called Novocaine because it's a 67 Chevy Nova. And so I call it Novocaine. And then the rest of these things are around me are mostly my dad's toys at his shop. There's some other race cars back there that I've raced in the past. I'm going to race in the future. And It's a collection that he has worked his entire life to amass. And so when we were doing this, because I'm down here working on our house project and where things are a little scattered right now, and my house where I'm living, and I'm just moved. So I thought this would be a nice background.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I
This is
love
my
looking
favorite
at
place
that.
to be. Yeah, this is
mean,
one of my favorite places in the whole world.
I love looking at your face, and I love looking at your car.
Yeah, I love looking at my car too. Long-term dream is that I will live in a shop house that has a lot of glass, and I will have living quarters and then glass garage doors that separate the house from the shop. And then I can just look at my race cars while I'm,
Nice.
some people want to watch TV. I just want to sit there, maybe read a book and, gander over at the cars every so often. So.
I love it. So let's just start there. Where did your love of racing, when did that get started?
Oh, I was really little, actually. I started racing motorcycles when I was, I'll go with 7-ish. And when I started, and I raced dirt bikes, motocross. And when I started, I couldn't, like when you're on a motorcycle, you kind of straddle the seat and then you put a foot on each side of the bike. But I was too little to actually touch with both feet. So I would have to start out on the stoop at my house, and I'd stand on the stoop and I'd get one leg over the bike and the other leg would be on the stoop, and I'd have to, like, from a dead start, take off and keep the bike up. Or I'd have to run alongside it and get it rolling and then jump on. So I learned how to not crash very much, because when I was little, if I fell, it was really hard for me to get the bike off of me, number one, or to get going. So I had an older brother that raced, and I told my parents I wanted to do it. And my mom, who is famous for my whole childhood, saying, I don't know if you're big enough, but if you want to try, okay. And so I told her I wanted to do it. And she said, okay, I don't know if you're big enough, but you can try if you want to. But the only thing is, you can't race powder puff, which is like a women's racing, I don't know, league, association, whatever. You have to race with the boys, because we can't go to 2 different tracks at the same time. So if you're going to race, you can race, but your brother already started. He's got a season ahead of you, and we're not going to pull him out. So you just got to go race with your brother. So it was me, my friend Christine, and then all the other people were boys. And later, I literally just found this out a couple of years ago, because a bunch of people that we used to race with in Michigan, where I grew up, we were written up in a bunch of magazines and stuff, which, as a little kid, I didn't know about any of that stuff. And but there was a reunion for all the people on our race team dynamic, and and so they set up a Facebook group and stuff, and they started posting articles where our whole race team and our little region, because even people in other teams, we would all practice together and run drills together, and like friendly competition on off weekends and evenings and stuff. They called us the Michigan Mafia. A bunch of little, like, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, because we would show up at regional races and just kill people. And so some media guy dubbed us the Michigan, our little American Motorcycle Association region, the Michigan Mafia. So apparently.
Love that guy.
Right? It's like the best. Can you just imagine, like, all these, like, literally elementary age kids?
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, but we worked hard, though. That's the thing. Like, my brother was usually between 1st and 3rd in the state. I was usually around 10th. And the reality is, my brother worked way harder at it than I did. I worked at it, but he, like, drilled. And so he taught me a lot about having work ethic in anything that you wanted to do. I mean, my parents certainly did too, but he was the one that I spent more time with. So to see him work so hard at it, I realized that if I wanted to be like he was, I was going to have to get out there and start working. And so the first season, I didn't work very hard, but after that, I got to work, because I realized the results were in the process. It was in the work. It was in the showing up and doing it over and over, and even when it was boring. And I think people undervalue boredom. As a principle for life. I think people undervalue it, because learning something new and gaining mastery requires a lot of boredom, because you just have to do over and over and over. And I was watching what is the Michael Jordan? There's a documentary about Michael Jordan, the ball player, and I love basketball, especially that era. And he was talking about how he would make things up in his head to keep himself interested. So he would, in his mind, make up a rivalry with somebody on another team, or he would make up in his head that somebody slighted him, so that he could get himself impassioned to go out there and just push himself through the boredom of practice, and because he was kind of a prisoner in hotel rooms and stuff when he was on the road. So it's a fascinating documentary, but I was like, okay, yeah, because I've often thought that boredom was really undervalued as a principle.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
Plus you also get boredom and failure in that learning process. So, those two things together are really, really juicy. That's really exciting and motivating to keep you. If you love novelty, it's like, oh God, what am I doing?
Well, in failure, I think, I don't know, I think failure gets a bad rap too, right? Because failure is just feedback. So we're getting feedback about something, like this one trail that we took over here, maybe that didn't work. So while we really wanted to go over here and do this thing, and we tried it, we got feedback. So we don't have to wonder anymore about that trail over there. Because rather than wondering, we just went ahead and did it. And I'm definitely like, I wander off on a lot of trails. Sometimes they work out, and sometimes they most assuredly do not. I've had some considerable crash and burns. There's no doubt about that.
And I don't think you're just talking about racing.
I am not. I am not. All walks. I mean, this earlier this year, I crashed and burned down my stairs, busted up both my feet. Bam! It happens. And interestingly, that same week, I had this thought, because we've been working pretty diligently and pretty hard down here, and I had this momentary thought of like, oh, I just want a little break, like maybe just a little break, like.
Okay, you got one.
Message received.
The other night we did our holiday party, and someone showed up and was making a big deal about how she kept saying that her life was such a shit show. And she's like, I'm here late because it literally happened. The dogs lost control all over the house. Like, she was literally cleaning it up. And I was thinking, like, we have to be really careful with this word magic, right? Because
so careful.
Even the thought magic is kind of tricky when you get to that point, and it's like, I really need a break. And then you don't give it to yourself. It's like the universe goes, oh, here.
No. In 2 ways, right? 2 ways. Like a literal break.
Yep. You got what you needed. You got time off.
Literally got a break. Yep. And I got a break.
Yep.
So words are important, even if we just think them. Maybe more so. But I think there's a certain velocity when they're said out loud as well. I think saying them out loud, it's like a declaration. And it's one of those things that I've been mindful of, is saying stuff out loud it's really making a declaration. And so I'm starting to get super choosy about some of that stuff, because I've touched that hot stove a few times. More than a few, if I'm honest.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love what you said about the piece about the work ethic and the boredom, because you said something about like there being something that's more in the process than in the outcome. And I know that, it's funny because you have race cars behind you. And so I feel like we need to really explain to the listeners the journey of industries that you've experienced, because there's an important thread here, and I think you nailed it in the first few minutes. But to see how that has, what has your journey been like? Because you started out racing, and then where did it take you?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I started out racing. Well, and as a kid, really, anything athletic, I was a gamer. I mean, and in our family, because my dad was an old drag racer, he worked in the automotive industry. My mom was a private duty nurse, and so we grew up in this small town where it was kind of like it was a lot of blue collar people that were trying to become white collar, and so we lived out in the country, and my parents commuted to the city. And so I saw a lot of people working hard to try and get somewhere. And so, I mean, my first job was, was a waitress, and I was terrible. I got fired.
Me too, girl. Me too.
It was one of my lessons though, but I had a chance to redo that, and I did really good. I became really good at it because I didn't like having that failure on my record. Like I didn't like it. Like I learned from it, but ultimately I was able to go back and straighten it up. But in between getting fired and waitressing again, I was a dishwasher, literally to wash dishes. That's where I started. And at the Pontiac Silverdome, where the Detroit Pistons used to play and the Detroit Lions and stuff like that. So, and I was always surrounded by athletes, and I grew up playing sports. And so for me, having parents that worked really hard, and then when you play team sports, it's not, it's never just about you. It's about the team. And so I learned really, really young. I was an exceptional ball player, softball player. I couldn't bat worth a dip, but I could field. I had a mitt like nobody's business. And I really learned the value of being a part of a team and stepping in wherever the gap was to make a contribution. And because I was good, because I had a mitt and I could play pretty much any position except pitcher, it didn't matter, catcher, outfield, it didn't matter. I learned to step in the gap, and I learned there was a lot of value in being a diverse player who could step in a lot of gaps. And I don't even think I was that clear about that until much, much later in life. And when I got a little bit older, I worked for an audiovisual company, which I enjoyed. It was my first office job, where I was out of the service industry. And then at that job, I ended up starting off at the medical device company, which I ultimately became one of the partners of. And in that business, it was where I got to professionally put into place two things. One, being a team player and standing in the gap, and being willing to be humble enough to not have to be the boss. And that was a big thing for me to learn at a very young age, that I could force my hand and act entitled and have to be the boss, or I could say, where do I need to play? What position do I need to play on this team, and do that. And that has served me really well through my life. But that business also, my partner at the time, he was tired and wanted a break. And so he just kind of one day said, I don't want to go in anymore. And I was like, hold on a second. I'm living in a double wide. My kid, I got two toddlers. I'm living in a double wide. And you don't want to go into work anymore? That's not an option. So I went in and took over the business. Fortunately, I was smart enough to know I didn't know very much. And so I called my dad, who was a very successful business person, and said, listen, I know this thing can be successful, and I know I'm in over my head, and what should I do? And he said, you got to go to these seminars by this guy, which was Dr. Deming, W. Edwards Deming. And so I went to the seminar, and I didn't understand much, but what I really understood was what he talked about with children in schools and grading, and how grades in school and getting children to conform to sitting still and being at a desk and being lectured to was not the optimal method of learning for most young people. And that grades had to do with the school, the books, the environment, the home environment, and the application of the student and their talents and skills and work ethic. All of that make the grade, but we act like it's just the student. And so because I understood that part of his theory, it hit me on a very personal, emotional level before I could ever make an application to it in business. And it's probably why I'm so convicted about his theory, because it literally changed the way that I raised my children. And it kept me from treating them in a way about school that would have been damaging to them. And I was so grateful for that, so grateful. But you know how it goes though. Kids don't understand what they got. And so my kids would come home and say, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so get paid for A's. And my oldest was valedictorian. And I was like, really? Yeah. And I go, well, what happens if so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so doesn't get A's? Well, they get grounded. And I was like, well, you don't get paid for A's, but you also don't ever get in trouble for a bad grade. So I can slice that both ways. So that was the last time we ever talked about getting paid for grades. Because they never had any fear about coming home and saying school was hard, or I'm struggling in class, or, you know, if there was ever anything about a grade, because I wasn't identified with the grades and I didn't have their intellect or their willingness as a student to be tied to a grade. It was about, I feel like I'm saying work ethic constantly, but it was way more about that for me. Are they applying themselves, and are they going in and being a engaged student? So their job was to go and try and learn something. It wasn't to worry about grades or any of that other stuff. And so when I went to Dr. Deming's seminar again, which I did, I got a hold of Dr. Deming when he was 90, and he taught until I was 93. And I think he taught until the month he died. And so I went to a lot of his seminars, like bang, 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 because I knew I was getting like a PhD level in business by this guy, even though it wasn't being taught in a college. I understood the value of what was being taught, that everything is a system of interdependent components, and that there's a lot of things in business that are knowable and controllable if you approach it in the right way. And so I understood this guy really knew what he was doing. And you know, he turned around companies like Toyota and Honda and brands like that way back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So the reason that they're the powerhouses that they are now is because Deming was over there way back after the war, teaching them how to do business. And so, you know, Mr. Toyota with a D credited Dr. Deming with a lot of their early success back then. So, you know, so I used that in our medical device company. And I brought in somebody who knew more than I did about the theory to help me, because I knew that I was committed to the theory, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was 20 something. And I was, you know, I really didn't know what I was doing. And he and I would, you know, he would have disagreements with me sometimes. And he would say, I'm not just going to be a yes man. And I'm like, I don't want you to be a yes man, but I don't understand what you're saying to me. So you don't want me to be a yes man, woman either, right? So we had to figure that out. We had to figure out our relationship. And so once we got over the hump and that business started to get successful, my partner came back in again, and which was another transition. And it was a good thing, and it was also a hard thing, because to be the person who felt like she pushed it to get it to a certain point, but it was a choice I made for the overall team and for my family. It was the right decision. It was definitely the right decision. And I did that business for a long time. I did it for, I don't know, a dozen years or something. And I really cut my teeth in that business. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what to do, and I learned a lot about what not to do. So if anybody wants the list, call me. I have a very long list of stuff that does not work. Long. You're welcome to it.
Now, I'm curious, how much longer is that list of what not to do than the list of what to do for you?
You know, the list of the things to do, actually, because of Deming's theory, it's pretty short. It's a pretty short list of things to do. And it's knowing when to do which thing. That's the magic recipe, is it's knowing when to do which thing of his. But we've developed our own software to be able to deploy his theory. And then my father now teaches Dr. Deming's philosophy, and his teaching partner, who's also been one of my mentors, also wrote an analytics software package that does all the, it's all the analytics, control charts, and a bunch of other stuff, which I won't bore you with because it's a bunch of statistics. But I mean, I could make it cool and sexy, but we'd have to have charts and stuff like that. And that's not what we're doing today.
I'm sorry. Analytics and charts and spreadsheets. And
she just blacked out its spreadsheet.
I'm back now.
I know, but if I showed it to you the way we use it, you'd be like, okay, I get it. Because see, you don't have to do the math. That's the brilliance of the software. You can look at a chart that helps you make a decision, about the outcomes of processes in the business. And so I think it's interesting that, you know, as I'm hearing myself talk about this, what I think is interesting as a kid, I learned that what I valued was the hard work and the process in sports. And then when I got a hold of Deming's work, because he's all about system and process, I think it was a natural fit for me, because everything that we do around this shop, the house business over there, all of it, the racing business, it's all systems and processes done in a very specific way, which that's what it was for me as a kid. I had a very specific process that I used to teach myself how to be a good ball player. And like, I didn't have anybody to practice with. So that's why I don't know how to bat. I can't bat worth a dip, but I can field, because I would throw the ball up in the air as hard and as high as I could. And then I'd have to run after it and catch it. And I wouldn't make it easy on myself. Like I'd throw it and then I'd have to like double time it to get to the ball to catch it. And I would play a game with myself about, you know, every time I'd miss the catch, what I'd have to do. And I penalized myself if I missed it. So I had this whole little process that I used to get myself to be good at it. And so when I got a hold of Deming's work, I think it was just a fit for kind of the way that I learned to be as a kid growing up, you know, partly watching my parents work hard and partly doing drills on motorcycles. Like we'd go to training camp and it would be drill, 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 drill. And it was a process that was, you did it exactly the same every time. And that's how you learned how to do it. So, you know, there's a lot of, it all fits together in a very odd way that I wouldn't have realized as a kid, or even, you know, I don't know. I don't know where all the pieces fit together for me, but I know you and I were doing a retreat, Amanda, and I kept thinking I had to like keep certain, you know, like I had to keep racing over here and a racing business over here. And then whatever else I was going to do with like consulting and teaching Deming over here. And then I remember you saying to me like, well, why can't you just do all of it, bring all of it to a place and just do all of it all in one place? And, you know, and ultimately, really what I want to do is I just want to use Deming wherever I am. And then anybody that wants to learn it, they can come where I am and we'll teach it, but you got to come to us and we're going to teach it to you by us doing what we're doing. And so that's more the approach that I am at these days, is I'm going to use it in a business that I'm doing. And anybody that wants to know about it, come over here and I'll share with you anything you want to learn about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know Lori had the opportunity to come to one of your racing events, right? And see the system in action. Lori, do you have anything noteworthy about that?
That was so much fun. I mean,
I'm so jealous.
It was crazy because there was so much going on, but the impact that Cheryl and the other drivers made on all those bets, it was, wow, it makes me want to cry right now just thinking about it. It was so cool. It was just watching her in action, and she's a great delegator. You know, here, I want you to do this. And she'd give you the project and then she's off doing something else because she has delegated that. And I have learned a lot from you, Cheryl, because a lot of times that's how I work too. I want to have people on my team that I can say, this is what I need you to do. And you can trust that they're going to go ahead and follow through with that. And I think to me, that's what I saw, how you worked, is that you could delegate things and people just got it done. And that gave you the time to go and work with the vets and to show them the cars and to talk to them about it and to give them the rides. And just, it was a full day of just enjoyment and pleasure, and to watch these vets' eyes light up and like break through that shell. Just to see them light up was incredible. It was so incredible. I want to know when we're doing it again.
Me too.
Yeah, so I'm excited to do it again too. The collaborator that jumped on board with me super early in those, just so people understand what it is that we're talking about. I'll just give like a 30-second. So I gave some rides to some military people when we were doing a fundraiser for a wounded veteran program. And the veterans kept having a lot of responses in the car, like super gleeful or sometimes crying and very emotional. And I couldn't really understand in the beginning what was going on. And so when I asked one of them, after I took him for a ride, because I was doing a fundraiser and giving rides in exchange for donations, but I was running 2 cars, mine, and then I was running a pink Nova station wagon, similar to this, but a station wagon, pink, white top, surf wagon. And so I was hauling in the money because I was running 2 cars, and one of the cars could take 3 people at a time, plus me. So, but because I had that party mobile, they were loading up a bunch of veterans in the car with me. And so it was that day when I took a Vietnam veteran and some of his friends for a ride, and we parked, and he said to me, you just changed my life today. He said, that 30-second ride just changed my life. Something just changed in me. And I feel the way I have not felt since before I went away to the war. And he was already crying before he said that to me. So he's sitting in the car, I'm crying, he's crying. And I'm like, what is happening? And so that's really what kicked it off for me, is that I held on to that. And I wanted to be able to do that for more veterans, because most of the people in my family, for sure, all the men in my family have served in the military. And I just have always had a deep and abiding respect for our military service members. And so I was not able to let go of that moment when he said that. And so I wanted to be able to do something, but it took a while to get all the pieces put together. It took working through some things with you, Amanda, as you know, and, you know, with one of my best friends telling me to keep it simple because I was overcomplicating it. And then when I really got it down to brass tacks, and I was talking to my friend, Mary Sparkjoy, and I was just having a conversation with a friend, and they have a private foundation. And so she called me back a week later and said, how many of those things do you think you could do a year? And I was like, I don't know. And she said, do you think you could do one a month? And I was like, I don't know. And she said, okay, well, let's try. I said, what? So they said they were going to fund the first one. And about a few weeks into the planning of the first one, they came back on and said, let's do 12. And then they re-upped again for a second year. And then we were in the process of getting through year 3, and then COVID happened. But yeah, it has been singularly the most fulfilling thing I have ever done. And so in between that and the medical device company I worked at a children's clothing company. A couple of sisters that founded it up in Washington State, where I used to live. And so I thought I would try something that was not a male-dominated industry, since everything else I'd done before them pretty much had been. So I was like, I'm going to try something that's not a male-dominated industry. You know what? Business doesn't care. It doesn't care. It really doesn't care. So it was no different. So, and not in a good or bad way. It's just, it was no different. Business is business. So, and then I transferred into doing emotional literacy programs for teens, which is where I met Amanda. And I did that. I learned a bunch there about that. And I did use a lot of my business experience to be able to do that, because I could go out and talk to people at like service districts and grant agencies and funding agencies and stuff. Because of my business background, it was not intimidating for me to go in and talk to those kind of agencies about putting together a program and having them fund it. And so the pieces came together for me to do that, but I ultimately just went a different direction after I did that. But I did that for, I don't know, I guess 2 years of programs. Yeah, 2 years, pretty active programs. And I think I sold more events and contracts than anybody else, as far as I know, still to date. So, and, again, it was just, I developed a process for how I was going to do it. And it was that being bored and that work ethic thing again. Because I mean, back then they used to say it was 10 to 1, you get 10 no's for every 1 yes. And so I played a game with myself, and I would pound on the phone to call and try and get funding or get people to bring teens. Who would have thought that getting them to bring the teens was harder than getting the money, gosh sakes, but it turned out to be. So, but I played a game with it. I was like, all right, you could 10 no's and then you'll get a yes. But sometimes I had to take 30 no's. And then I would get like, yes, yes, yes. And so it's not an exact science, but in total, but it was the same thing. I'd keep track of numbers and I'd just play a game with it for myself. And it was the boringness of cold calling and taking the rejection and just saying, okay, dust off, get back on the phone. I get out of my chair and jump up and down to try and give myself a little more energy to, because nobody you wouldn't want any of this, like that's not gonna sell a program. So.
Yeah. Well, plus, I mean, you were having the experience of being in the rooms, and I do want to kind of ask you, where did the interest, because you're like in heavy business mode, right? But then there's an interest in transformation and healing and social emotional learning. Like, what was the bridge there for you? What drew you to that work?
It was a couple things actually. So one, and I didn't ask her if I could tell this story, but she's told it many times, so I think it's all right. So it's two things. One is I kind of thought that I would like to do some public speaking stuff, but I'd made a joke to some friends, like, is there like a boot camp for that? Like, because I'd actually gone to stand-up comedy boot camp as a way to like scare the crap out of myself and do something different. And so I was the only non-comic there, by the way. They told me, oh no, there will be a bunch. There were not a bunch. These were all working comics and then me. And then I got to get up on stage and do a set. I'm like, really? But I'd done that. And so I was like, I wonder if there's like a boot camp for public speaking. Well, there is a lot of them now, but there wasn't back then. This was what, I don't know, in 2008. So it was 13, 14 years ago. So there weren't a lot. So I was on vacation with my kids and everybody got to pick an event that they wanted to do while we were on vacation. And this is the time when The Secret and all that stuff was going on. And so I picked going to hear one of the speakers that was a part of that whole movement. And at the time there was a lot of stuff going on with my kids and myself and some other family members. And one of my kids was we were having a little bit of friction between us. And she was seeing someone that she knew I wouldn't be happy about her dating. And she had been keeping it a secret from me, which is hard for her because she's a pretty honest person. So we went to this nighttime program, and it was and we went through some exercises, and then there was another program that was like a day-long one. I don't remember what the time distance was, but I think it was even still while we were on vacation in Hawaii. And so we ended up going, and we were there. It equipped my daughter to be able to have the conversation with me that she wanted to have. And I appreciated being able to have the conversation. And so when we were outside afterwards, they were talking about this training program that was going on. And I went over to look into it. And I said I was going to take the information and then I would decide and let them know later. And my daughter is standing there. She goes, no, you're going to write the check and you're going to pay them now. And then if you decide later you don't want to do it, you're going to ask for your money back. That's how we're going to do this. I was like, oh, pardon me.
So she got her feistiness from you.
Yeah. So I got voluntold that I was going to go ahead and sign up for the program. And we would worry about canceling later. She's like, no, if you go home, you won't actually sign up for it. But if you sign up for it and you decide you don't want to go, when you get home, you will ask for your money back. So this is how we're going to do this. So she's kind of smart, that kid.
Well, and Cheryl's not a quitter. And if she had signed up for it and then not done
Right.
it just wouldn't have worked out.
On the button.
She knew her mama. She knew her mama well.
And then I did kind of laugh about it because I was like, wait, didn't I say something about a speaking boot camp? And it kind of sounds like this is the thing, which is why I went and looked into it, and which I'm very glad I did it. I mean,
it was boot camp.
Pardon?
It was boot camp.
Oh God, yes, it was. Everybody having breakdowns.
We all thought we were going in there to help some youngins, and we ended up like laid out flat on the floor in tears the first day going, why are we here again?
We got coached up one side, down the other. underneath and through, and I don't know, it was madness. But you know what's really funny is that program that I went to in Hawaii, the person who is now like one of my inner circle people, one of my very best friends, was there that same weekend with her kids. And we were trying to figure out if we actually got paired up with, but it was too much time and distance had passed and we couldn't remember. But when we started talking about it, we were like, we were both at that same event, but we didn't know each other. And we both signed up for the program at that same time too. So it's kind of funny. She was the first person I sat next to when I came in the first day of training, and I was a mess. That first day I had a migraine. I was a mess.
Yeah.
And she always
welcome to work.
Yeah, she always says, man, I'm glad you didn't show up on the first day the way you came in on the second day, because on the second day you were pulled back together. The first day you were a mess. And she was like, oh, I just wanted to take care of you. I was like, yes, that's an unusual way for me to show up somewhere, but yeah, but I'm super glad. So, because like a lot of really good close friends
Mhm.
I have met through that experience. So even though I didn't stay in that experience, I got to take what was so wonderful about it, everything I learned. And it does really teach you how to handle a room. I mean, it really did teach us how to handle a room, you know?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh yeah. We learned a lot in those rooms. And it's funny that you said that about you and your friend, because the same was true for me and Matt. We were at the same event, just this random thing. And then we're the one, we ended up getting super close during the process. And I call y'all my foxhole buddies, because I thought I was going there to help a bunch of kids. And then I was like, oh, I'm in a war zone of my story. Like that's what's happening. And it was just the safest place. Like we just hunkered down together and did the work that was slapping us in the face, before we even could get to the point where we would try to put contracts together. but it's true. Cheryl was like out the gate, certified the quickest, the most, like sales, just easy. And I just remember watching her and listening to her on calls and thinking like, who is this woman? Because we weren't really tight throughout that program. I think it was kind of
It wasn't until later.
it was towards the end of the program where you did
Because
that.
you guys started before us. Remember, there was two groups and then eventually they merged us.
Right. Yeah. They merged us. And then I started, because I was just like the unbelievable hot mess in the program. So I was going to every facilitator's events just to do the work. Like I would volunteer whatever capacity you needed me in, but they all knew that I would end up in the middle of the room in a heap of tears doing my own work. And all of them figured out early not to put me in charge of music. It doesn't matter what kind of system you had in place, Amanda was not going to handle the music right. But I just remember, I have these memories because you were doing most of them up in your neck of the woods. And then you came down to Southern California to do one of them. And I had the opportunity to volunteer in there. And that's when I was like, oh, I need to know this lady. Like this woman went toe to toe with adults in the room, because we create all this safety for the teens and they're starting to unpack all their stuff. And it's just this beautiful transformational thing. And then one of those adults opens their freaking mouth in the back of the room. And we're like, the whole room like takes in air. And right before the master facilitator jumps in, Cheryl was like, let's talk about that. She just handled it like it looked like you'd been doing it for ages.
I remember exactly what he said.
Do you?
I do. I remember who it was. I remember what he said. And that was actually after, I think that was after I got certified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember, because he said, well, because he said to me, because what he said is, well, this is great because it'll crack these teens and they need to be cracked. And I remember he said that, and I don't know who was close to me, but I said, we'll see who's going to get cracked.
Yep. I was close to you. And I was like,
I thought, oh, if that's his attitude, he's coming in with the wrong vibe, because this isn't about cracking anybody. And I didn't actually mean like cracking him, hurting him. I meant he's bottled up with something that he's in pain about.
Mhm.
And what I believed, and I don't know, Alyssa, I think you might have come to some of those that we did, because we did a few of them in Laguna, and I think you maybe came to at least one of them. But yeah, I just remember thinking that the teens would be served if he could move through some of his pain too, because they were spending a lot of time with him, and he was there, I don't know, group home, whatever his job was at the group home. And I just remember thinking that it would be better for everybody, him included, if they got to have a change. But the energy that he came to it with was not, it didn't seem loving towards the teens. And I'm sure, he was in the environment that he was in, but I thought, well, you may be like that out of this room, but that is not how we're going to do it in here. Because that's antithetical to everything we're doing. And one of those, were you there, were you and Alyssa there for the little girl who climbed on her chair?
Mm-hmm.
She got scared and climbed on her chair and wouldn't come out.
Yep.
And her partner was trying to get her to share with the room what she had shared one-on-one with him, and she got scared and climbed under her chair. I remember her. So I took the microphone and climbed under the chair with her, because I figured she felt safe under there. So I figured I'll just go down there and talk to her.
Yeah.
See what was happening. See if maybe she wanted to share, if she didn't have to come out from underneath the chair. And that whole room loved on her. That whole room held space for her. And I mean, that was when that was a big room. I think we probably had, geez, close to 75. This is the way the universe works. I was like, I raised 2 girls. So, I can do these emotional literacy things, but they better send me girls, because I didn't have any boys and I don't know what to do with boys. And then my programs were like 80% boys, teen guys, like 20% girls. And that room was most decidedly, like, disproportionately males in that room. But man, they just embraced her like a little sister, and they all looked out for her, and they all like got really quiet and really held space for her in that room. It was really one of the most touching things. I mean, it changed me to see how these young men that had come from, a group home that had criminal backgrounds already, and how they just really embraced the work. And I mean, they were like, makes me want to cry. They were amazing, amazing teachers, like just amazing, just at a core level, amazing teachers. And they just wanted to be loved. They just wanted to be loved and cared about. And I'd done some other work with some other teens, and they came to us through the criminal justice system as well. And it was the same thing. It was the exact same thing. And with that group of teens, which was different than this program we were in, I worked with them for a while. And on the last day, one of them was graduating out of his program that he was in, and he was going to get to go home. And he told me he was going to call, he told me he was going to, he came up to me and he gave me this big, like 6'3", whatever, big, huge, like not just like, strong young guy. He was probably, I don't know, 18 at the time. And so he came up to me and he just kept like slapping his chest and then pointing at me and going like this and pointing at me. And I was looking at him, and he goes, I have this feeling right here. I have this feeling, and it's about you. And I was like, I won't say his name, but I was like, you know what? I love you too. And his eyes got like this big. And he looked at me and he goes, that's what that feeling is. Like, that's what that feeling is. So he'd never actually been able to make the connection between that feeling and the word that went with it. And he was like, I love you. And I was like, yeah, I get it right there. I'm right there with you. And he goes, you know what? I have that same feeling about my mom. And I was like, I think you should call her and tell her that. And he's like, you know what? I think I will. Yeah. I mean, you can't. And that's those young people showing up and doing the work. the work ethic thing. They showed up week after week after week in this program, like over and over and over again. And they dug in and they said, I'm going to do this thing and it's scary and I don't know how it's going to turn out. And so, you know, I learned a lot about like just being there and being with them, and then I didn't have to fix stuff. Like if there's anything that I could say to adults about young people is we don't have to fix it. If we can just witness and believe with positive intention behind the actions, because sometimes the actions don't make sense. But if we can believe in the positive intention of the person, regardless of the action, that is a game changer. That part is a game changer. And they changed me in that way because I never could look at certain things the same way again, ever. After between the teens at the literacy program and this other program that I volunteered at, and that other program that I volunteered at, I was like, oh, I'll do it for 30 days. And, you know, 3 years later, I'm still doing it. Like, because I was a commitment phobe. And they're like, can you volunteer for this thing? And you're qualified to do it. And I'm like, I don't know. It sounds scary. And they're like, well, we have no one. So there will be no one here for the teens. And I was like, okay, well, I'll commit to 30 days. Like, that's all I'm willing to commit to is 30 days. And, but you know, they sucked me in. So I stayed for way longer than 30 days.
It's hard to walk away from that type of work when you see that type of transformation happening and in hours. You know, I just always loved how we'd have the photographers come in at the beginning of the day, and then at the top of day 2 they would be like, you know, coming and shaking us, and they'd be like, look at this, and they had pictures of the same young person from that morning before and the afternoon before, and they were completely different. Like their posture was different, their facial expression, it was, and you know, it didn't surprise us anymore, but we cried with every single one of those teens. I mean, it was incredible work. And so, yeah, I mean, one of the things as you were talking, I was thinking about that program, and I was thinking about one of the mantras of it was like, when going back to the systems work, right? Like one of the reasons why you like really like found your groove there, I think, is because there was that conversation of like, you know, the leader needed to be able to walk into any one of our rooms and know exactly where we were at and how to support. It was like, you know, the McDonald's French fries, you know, right? Like, and so, but it was this crazy thing because it was like, you know, there was this structure that worked. It was a system that they had that worked, and yet it needed to be alive. It needed, you know, like do it exactly like this. Oh, except that part around the story and like being you, like you can't be like us. No. And
do it exactly this way, but be you while you're doing it.
It is like, sure. Right. Hence that's why it took me 3 years, because I was like, who am I? And then I figured it out. And then I've, you know, but, you know, when I think about, you know, getting back to this piece around the racing for you and what has happened with the racing and the housing project. And I want to make that last little bridge here for our viewers and listeners, because, you know, so many of us come to the work of trying to change the world with decades of experience and knowledge and wisdom gathered from people who have been successful at it, that we help them be, you know, we learned it and we were successful inside their system. And then we go out to do it ourselves. And we have this idea, like in that room, right? We have to do it just like them. So I remember when you called me, when was that? Like 2015, 2000, I just moved to Oregon. So it had to be 2016. And we had the retreat where I was like, okay, I put everything that you could and would like to do, you know, like write it down. And I get to this apartment that she's rented, and it is like freaking wall to wall. Like the stuff that is in this woman's head is no joke, all over the walls. And I know it's not even all of it, but like all of the different healing modalities and therapy, transformation opportunities that she'd experienced and facilitated in business. And I just remember thinking like, I know this all fits together. Like, right? Because the reality is that it's that piece, it's going back to that piece of like, it's who you are in every room. You bring the lens of systems, you bring the lens. So you're always filling those gaps and putting those things in place. And so I would love for you to share like what that journey has been like for you of like, you know, because you were like, you had something, but you didn't know what it was. You're like, I know I need to do something. It's something about spark. Help me figure this out. And it took a minute. And I'd love for you to just kind of share with our audience, you know, what you've realized as a result of that work and how that all fell together for you.
Yeah, it was actually, you know, there are three of you that were kind of really fundamental for me in being able to put, and all of it can be summed up in one word, which is integration.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in terms of like helping me figure out how to roll it out into the world, there's three of you. It's you, Deidre, and Rhonda are the ones that all had a piece of the puzzle for me to help me get it put together. But the last piece was truly just me getting out of my own way. And I know we hear people say that all the time, but I can tell you what that looks like, which is that I felt compelled that I had to over deliver. But what over delivery really was putting obstacles in my own way, because I kept thinking I had to give so much. But what I know is whenever I've gone to any program, I can only take on so much at a time. Like I literally can only take on so much at a time. So the best thing that I can do is be all of me when I show up somewhere. So all I have to do is be open and willing to be all of me when I show up. And then whatever part of my history, my background, the work that I've done, whether it, and I've done a lot of personal work because I've been sober a long time, and that's been its own journey. And it's not something that I don't scream it from the rooftops, but I'm never hiding from it either. Because that's been a fundamental part of my healing journey. And, anybody who wants to know about that can ask me privately. I won't go into any details here because out of regard for the system that I've used to do that. But it was about being able to surrender myself enough to just show up where I go and trust that whatever needed to serve at that place would rise. But it took me several years of, like you were saying, like all that chart paper with all the Post-it notes. I wish if I'd had the presence of mind, I would have pulled that out. That would have been hilarious. But that would have been hilarious because there's a lot of them. But it was being able to understand that all of those things on the literally, like probably, a whole chart, whatever you call it, a whole package of chart paper full of all this stuff. Like all of that lives inside of me. It's already integrated in here. I just had to have the integration from here to here. Because all that stuff goes with me. I can't unlearn that. I have facilitated the artist way, which is about unlocking, uncovering, and rediscovering your creativity. I've been facilitating that for years. It goes with me everywhere I go. That whole innovation piece. Yeah, whatever that bio in the beginning, oh my God, that was too long. So people, it was too long. I heard it. I could have put 2 sentences, been done. Anyways, the innovation piece, a big part of that for me, of being at ease, being in the uncertainty of innovation, came from learning to trust my creative process. So all of those things have been living inside of me for as long as I have been doing whatever that work is and whatever it is, whether it's Deming, which, as I've said, started in the 90s, the Artist Way started in the mid 90s, like all of, I got sober in 94. Like there's a lot of things that started in my life around that time and have continued to be philosophies or approaches that I have continued to use and develop. And I consider myself to be a good advanced beginner in most of them. I don't know what they require for mastery, but I don't consider myself to have mastery in most of it, but I consider myself to have a grasp on it in a way that is meaningful to me and that allows me to make it actionable and meaningful for other people. And so if I can stay out of my own way, and I'll also, you know, like I have to constantly surrender my pride and my ego, because that can get in the way. Like, I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but you know, those things can get in the
No,
way.
you're the only one. It's you.
Okay. Well, over here on my island by myself.
No, girl. No, girl.
So, you know, it just all goes with me. I mean, it's the same thing in your work, right, Amanda?
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing with any of you, right? We take ourselves wherever we go. And if I can be at ease with the integration being what it is, which truly the integration piece around the Racing for Warriors stuff didn't happen until I was writing the chapter for the book.
Yeah.
I had a
Say
big
more about that.
I had a big boohoo session with you. I had a big boohoo session because I will not use the phrase post-traumatic stress for me. What I will say is trauma. I have suffered some pretty significant trauma at different times in my life in different ways. You know, starting from a very, very young age, you know, being injured as a toddler, not by anybody in my family, in a way that a toddler should ever be injured. And so, and other things happened after that. And so there was a part about that trauma that I didn't realize, that while I was doing these programs to be of support to the veterans, that I was rewiring some things in my own trauma. And that all of that adrenaline and all of that intensity and all of that fun and play was healing my stuff too. And it wasn't until I was writing the chapter at the end of the chapter that I realized, oh, that is the other part of the story that I hadn't put together. That freedom piece that I feel in the car is I'm not going to say my experience was like what a Vietnam veteran's was. I would never compare anything to that. But the rewiring in my brain, I think maybe is the same, you know, is maybe similar to what he was saying that he experienced.
Mhm.
And every time I get in the car and race, it's probably why I love the racing so much, is because every time I get in the car, because you cannot do anything else but race when you're racing. You can't. The minute you're thinking about something other than being in that car, you should park. Pull into the pits and park. You have no business being out there because you or somebody else is going to get hurt. And so for me, there's something very meditative about racing, because I can't be anywhere other than in the car and in my body. And so it's something that forces me to be inside of my body all the time. And, you know, I know, you know, Alyssa dances and, you know, and so I wonder what similarities there would be for you with that, because I you know, that's, I mean, I love to just goof off and dance. And I like the experience of being in my body in that way. But so I don't know if there are similarities for you in what you do, but, you know, it really just forces me to have a certain level of presence and just kind of being at one with me in the car. And it's why I like to race my car. I've raced a lot of other people's cars. I've been on fire, had brake failure. Like, if, you know, if you race, stuff is going to happen. It will happen. So it's why I like to race mine, because I know what she's going to do and not do. It's why I have manual brakes when most people have power assisted brakes. I have manual brakes in her because there's very few things that can fail in a manual brake. And when I hit that pedal, I mean, I have to stand on it because it's manual, but when I stand on it, she stops. And I know what she's going to do and I know what she's not going to do. So we've developed a lot of trust over the years. And, you know, so, I mean, for me, that's kind of bringing all of it together. It's an integration thing. You know, it's an integration, and with that integration comes freedom. It just comes freedom to just be me. Just be me. I don't have to be more or less. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to serve a bunch of other people. I don't, you know, I'm kind of like, what you see is what you get. You like it, you don't like it. I do my best to try and be cooperative and get along with people, but also, you know, I have a certain sense of like right and wrongness, and I do not mind speaking up if need be. I do not mind handling a situation if it needs to be handled. So, all I can do is my best on any given day.
Well, and I think that was one of the most amazing moments of working with you at that retreat was, we were like trying to figure it all out. And I realized like all this needs to be put into place somehow, like it all works together. And then we were talking about, but who would it be for and how would you market it, blah, blah, blah. And then we take her car out to the racetrack because she's going to run me around the track. And I am just sitting there watching her, like, she went from being this like, frustrated messenger trying to like, how am I going to get all of this out there? And then like an hour later, she's standing next to her car and there are all of these people walking by, checking out her car and asking her questions about it, and then being stunned when she answered the questions with as much knowledge as she has. And, it was just one of these things. I was like, that was the moment where I was like, yeah, I don't think you're gonna have to work at this at all. And I feel like it was within a year or so that all those other pieces came together. And I remember our conversations of just being like, we had this idea that it would be like workshop rooms or business development rooms or, and like the amazing transformation is happening on the track. And the business people who need to learn Deming and they also need the rewiring that's going to happen on the track. So let's invite them to these events and put them in charge of some of the systems so they see how seamless this all is and why they're going to have to go home and work for something like this, and it was just this, I just remember that time you called me and you're like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be this hard. Wait, it could actually be fun. Like I could just be doing the stuff that I really love. Now it's not all like the process isn't all pretty. You're in the middle of this housing project right now. And you got the process pieces up and at them, right? But
Hundreds. We've already written hundreds of processes.
Yeah.
It's a startup.
Ooh.
And we've already written hundreds of processes because we always use the product, market research. I mean, just to talk straight business for a second, like the thing that a lot of times people do not do is market research. Like, is there a market for this good or service? And if there's a market, is there margin left in the market? I mean, those are fundamental questions that just absolutely have to be asked. Is there a market? Is there margin? But we have to know those things. And so that's the first thing that we did. And then after we determined that that was the case, and then we did we have methods that we thought could be superior to what was currently out there? And what we're doing now is building these houses with no wood and no nails. It's a game changer. It's literally a disruptive way to build houses. So we felt like we were hitting on some of the key things. And so once we got that part down, we've been working on the innovation simultaneous to writing hundreds of processes. And I mean, with a level of detail that's like excruciating, sometimes like dental surgery. But the reason I'm willing to do it is because I know I know writing them has leverage. I know how it has leverage. I know where it has leverage. I know when it has leverage. And so it's that thing about boredom and being willing to be bored and be disciplined because it's what's required. So, I feel like it's for a few weeks now, I've been talking to people about, you just got to be willing to be bored, man. Like, just got to be willing to be bored. And which seems contrary to innovation, but there's a certain amount of discipline that is required. And yeah, so, and we've been working on, and everything does not always go perfect in a startup. I am here to tell you, I've done this more than one time. And the only thing you can be sure of is stuff's going to happen. It's going to happen. And you're going to go, wait, what? But that's also the fun part for me is I like it when we overcome the challenge. I'm somebody who enjoys the grind. I like the grind. Sometimes it's frustrating and I hate it, but in total, I like the grind because I like the sense of accomplishment on the other side.
Yeah.
Cheryl, I was I believe I drove Amanda, gave her a ride to that apartment. I didn't see the inside. But I was keeping in touch with Amanda during the process because you and I have a little bit of history.
Yeah.
You probably don't even know about the history that we do have. But anyway, I remember your angst about needing it to be fun.
Yeah.
Like the fun is missing. Fun is missing. And that was how do I integrate all this? And Amanda texted me, when like the racetrack, you would not believe what's going on at the racetrack right now.
Found it.
Yeah. And it's so amazing. And now that I'm hearing you talk about the being willing to be bored and the tediousness, it's like I just keep having chills because it's like you how do I even say it? I haven't said anything like this, but the revelation is you've got to be willing to be bored so that you can have fun.
Yes.
Like once you get it where you don't have to think about it, you have the fun. But it's just how this is all played out, where the racetrack was actually brought into it, is just amazing to me. Just amazing.
Oh, well, I think that's a great, that's actually a really great point, Tammy. I hadn't really thought about putting it together in that way. And yeah, it's because the boredom is a part of putting the structure in, right? It's doing the reps. It's like if you go to the gym, you got to do the reps and the outcome comes, but outcome doesn't come before the reps. I mean, Lori, I know you'd love to run, and you got to train. You don't get to go run the marathon if you don't do the training. And training is not nirvana every single day. I mean,
Nirvana. Is training nirvana ever?
So
sometimes, I don't know, sometimes.
training is
beautiful
pulling your
sunrise.
butt out of bed when you don't want to and it's freezing cold outside and still doing it anyway. And I think that's what it is with the business. It's pulling your butt out of bed every morning and saying, okay, I'm going to do this again for the 150th or 1050th or whatever time, because that at some point it's all going to come together, and then the fun and the magic is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm right now. I'm literally visualizing. I've been visualizing the people that will be living in the houses and the team that will end up working inside of the business with us. That's what I've been visualizing. Not even the houses themselves, to tell you the truth, because I already feel like I know what that looks like. But I spent a considerable amount of time envisioning what it's going to be like for the people crossing the threshold, and then what it's going to be like for the people working inside the company with us, because we're very unconventional in the way that we run the business. And to me, that's where I live. It's the team thing again, man. It's the team thing. The team gets in there and you start doing stuff together, and it's, I live for that part of it. So it's, there's other things too. I think Amanda knows this, but I'm keeping a list of everything everybody has called us so far that we've talked to about this project. They're not all flattering, but I'm keeping a list. It's
That list going to end up in a book someday.
I like Erin's face. Oh no, I'm going to get a t-shirt. I'm getting t-shirts made.
Nice.
I'm going to get t-shirts made. No, I got a whole plan for it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so
mean, that's what happens to the disruptors, right? You're the crazy one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're the lunatic.
Yep. There's a few of them that are my favorites. So those will be bigger. But when you see somebody that, where it's like there's like a bunch of words all over the shirt and it kind of makes something. Yeah, I'm going to do one. But I have a couple of the words that are going to be bigger than the other ones. And, a couple of them will have to have like bleeps in them, but that's fuel. That's fuel. I mean, the way you could get me to do something is tell me I can't do it. It's like double dog daring me. Then I get my back up. Now it's on. like Donkey Kong.
I call that feisty shit. That's my feisty shit side of me. Pardon the expression.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a lot nicer than what I call it for myself, but I'm right there with you. I have a patch that has some words on it. Most of them start with the letter F, and we won't go into it, but yeah. It's my favorite.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, Cheryl, we have so much that we could talk about. We're gonna have to have you back on the podcast to keep going, because there's just so many places I want to dive deeper into, the parenting with Demi and the business stuff. We didn't even tell people that you like designed a racetrack to teach business. Like, it's so funny. I mean, every entrepreneur knows what Oh Shit Corner is all about. Like, we know that intuitively, right? Like, so we're gonna have you back to talk more and share and celebrate as this startup gets off the ground, because it's just such incredible work. And the transformation that's going to result from it, like that feeling that you're seeing people having as they walk over the threshold, like, I can't wait for that phone call.
I can't wait to make that phone call, I can assure you. And anybody out there who's in a startup, whether you're a solopreneur or you have other people on the team, it's just, I mean, we've done it a few times. It always feels like it's never going to work out. And you never really know 100% if it's going to work out or not. But the thing is, everything that everybody's feeling, the uncertainty, the fear, the excitement, can I do this? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, all of those things, it's common. Everybody feels them. Like, everybody feels them. And we have a lot of seasoned people on our team. And when the good thing about being on a team is that usually everybody doesn't all want to give up on the same day.
Right.
So
this person quits this day.
Yes. If you're a solopreneur, get your group around you, get your circle around you. So on the days when you want to give up, they're gonna carry you through, So I just, if I could just leave, my parting suggestion would just be, get a circle around you and just know that everybody else is feeling the same amount of excitement, fear, uncertainty, like enthusiasm, passion, oh my God, all of it, like just all of it, the whole gamut. Everybody feels it. It doesn't matter how seasoned they are. Everybody still has nail biting moments. So nobody's in that alone.
Yeah.
Speaking from
Oh my
personal
gosh.
experience right now.
We need that one on a t-shirt,
Yeah.
and for the whole team. Not everyone wants to give up on the same day.
Thank
Great.
goodness. Thank goodness. Oh my gosh. All right, Cheryl, I am knowing that people are definitely going to want to hunt you down. So tell them how to do that. How do they get a hold of you?
Easiest way is my website, ponytailracing.com. And I'm on Instagram at Ponytail Racing, and they can Facebook, Cheryl Herrick, or Ponytail Racing. There's 2 pages. So just look up Ponytail Racing. You'll find me somewhere.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we do have to wrap this up because we have a meeting about launching our collaborative book coming up in like a few minutes. So I'm sorry to cut this short, but we'll do it again. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for being with us today and for telling your story and showing us your sexy car. And really just for being who you are in my life. You've been like this incredibly important space of safety for me since we met. Oh my God, 14 years ago. Is that what you said? It's a long time, lifetimes. So thank you for being who you are in my world.
Right back at you. Thank you. Thank you guys, all of you.
Yeah. And thank you all listeners and viewers for listening to this episode of Sips of Story and Sanity. If you like what you heard, please consider subscribing, leaving us a review, and maybe even sharing your own moment that came up for you while you're listening to Cheryl talk about her journey. Some moment on maybe not a racetrack, but some other moment that had you like, oh, this is it. Like, this is my safe place. This is where I'm open to not just being a healed person, but being a space of healing for other people. You can also find out more details about our upcoming collaborative book, You Can't Make This Story Up, What If It's All Happening for Us, which Cheryl has her chapter in, at truetointention.com. That's it for today. See y'all next time.